Carol Vick, thank you so much for coming to our Showcase studios today. It's such a pleasure to have you. I have known you for almost 20 years, which I cannot believe it. I feel like it was just yesterday since I was at Creative Circus. Now, many don't know you are actually a co-founder of the Creative Circus. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and all that?
That's correct. My background was in fine arts, and I spent a long time, like a lot of today's youth, trying to figure out what I was going to do with that fine arts background. Ended up meeting a fashion photographer, Rob Brinson, who was one of the co-owners of then Portfolio Center, where is how I kind of got started in the education business. And he was also one of the co-founders of the Creative Circus. So it's been a long time in that genre of creative for me, and it's been great.
Awesome. So I am so fortunate that as a senior in college, I actually heard from a classmate about portfolio schools in general. I had no idea about them, and I knew I was going to go on to something in the creative field. I went to the University of Florida, go Gators. But I actually did not know what my path would be. It was very business focused, and my friend was going into graphic design. He told me about Portfolio Center, which he actually then, the schools broke off at that time to go, he went to Creative Circus. I still went to Portfolio Center at that time. But how important do you think it is? Back then, it was invaluable to go to portfolio school. How do you think it is today to go from a university to a portfolio school, or places hiring right now straight from universities? Has the programming changed in universities, do you think, and how are books looking?
Well, I think, there are a few universities that do it really, really well. Like, of course, Brand Center's program is fabulous.
Yep.
But
or University of Austin.
University of Austin is good. Boulder is great. University of Colorado Boulder is had a lot of their graduates won pencils this year.
Wow.
Last year before. So I still think that in general, if you don't go to one of those special colleges that do these fields, the creative fields really well, that you probably will need to go to portfolio school. And it's just 2 years, quick, down, and really, really concentrated and in general taught by people that are in the industry rather than academia, which tends to get a little out of touch.
Yeah.
So.
What I saw, I went to a conference for the American Advertising Federation in Vegas this year, is more and more universities, it seems to be a trend that they're breaking off and they're creating like these little mini ad agencies, almost portfolio schools, if you will, within their universities. Do you think those schools are preparing them better for more the account media jobs and for creative, or do you think they're just getting their books ready to go on to portfolio schools?
I haven't seen any of those books, so I can't really answer. I would like to think that. I mean, as a parent of college-age students now, college-age children, there's nothing like sending your child to 4 years of college and then say, oh, you got to do 2 more. It is like a postgraduate program. So it would be nice if the 4-year colleges did prepare you for any of the careers in creative, but I think there's so much that you have to learn, and a lot of people think that, unfortunately, in this world, think that design and copywriting and writing in general are not the, fields that you train for, which is crazy.
Oh yeah, that is so crazy. I mean, my experience, like I said, was just invaluable to go to these schools. What people don't realize is the teachers there are teachers in the actual industry, teaching you real practical skills. So I started, like I said, at Portfolio School. I did move over to the Creative Circus, which for me, that was home as soon as I landed there. I started in art direction, and then I did move over to copywriting. What I felt really valuable is I learned both sides, and today it served me well, knowing I've always been a visual copywriter, and that's how I think. Now, today, do you think it's good to have both skills or multi-skills instead of being compartmentalized into, I'm just a copywriter, I'm just an art director, I'm just a designer?
I think you're going to be compartmentalized anyway, and certainly, the more skills you have, the better you will be. But I don't think you can market yourself with all the different skills necessarily, because, when there's an opening at an agency, it's an opening for one particular thing. Mm-hmm. And surely when you're a creative director, all of those things help. So, that would be a difference in workplace. So a bigger agency, your skill set might be really a lot more specific. If you get in a really small agency, then or design firm, you might actually get to utilize all those skills. But in general, people are looking for just in the creative fields anyway, just one thing. You have to know everything though. So of course that's a good thing too. The more you know, I think the better you are.
Right. So in my job at Shocase, I've been very fortunate to be able to go and speak to universities. It's a very big passion project of mine, coming from being an advertising student and then going to portfolio schools and having experience teaching at Academy of Art University as well. I get asked all the time, what should I have in my book? What are creative directors looking for? What should I not have in my book? How do I stand out when I'm looking for that job? So I'm going to pose those questions over to you as well, coming from an expert who looks at books. And I mean, I have answers for sure, like when I'm looking as well, like what are the things that really stand out that just like are just shooting red flags, like, oh my gosh, this is a student book?
Well, it's red flag would be a book of all print, perhaps now.
Okay.
Even though that's easy and you can see thinking, it also would tell you that there's a whole lot of training that the student hasn't received, because so little happens in print and paper, and there's a lot of preparation that a student has to have to get in the field, and that's a lot of education. There's a lot of you have to have a great website. It has to have really good UX. It has to be simple. It has to be clean. And it's still about ideas and stories and beautiful visuals. And if you can do something that is unique that people haven't seen, that makes a difference. So I think if you're a student starting out, find what you love, and find what you love out there in the world of images and media. What do you think is just outstanding, and kind of that's probably what you're going to do better. And you can kind of cater your book to that sort of work, because if anything, in the last few years, the industry has expanded in a huge way. So there are many, many different places that you can work now. That's not necessarily just the agency.
So you think definitely well-rounded. They shouldn't have just print. What I'm seeing more and more is students are now even having, app development.
Great. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
And it's a great idea. People are reached through social media now. So if you have a good social media idea, 1, 2, or 3 of them, as long as it's good, just don't put fluffy filler stuff in there, to show, I want to show I can do, sometimes not in junior books, but, in maybe young books, people will put in things, I just want to show I can work with a big budget, but if it's a bad idea and it's badly done, it's like, no, out.
Okay. So
editing is important, so.
A lot of things I remember even from my student days is we were told, get this out of the way first quarter, get all your sex jokes out of the way, get all your PSAs. If it's really, really good and really different, then put it in there. Otherwise, chuck it.
Absolutely. I think it's hard when you're a student and you're a certain age to speak to someone that, a lot of junior books, tend to speak to their own demographic, and if you can conquer that problem and learn to speak to different audiences, which is also your problem when you interview, because you're probably not going to interview with anyone that's just like you. And you've got to understand the process on the other side as well.
So creative directors are looking for someone who really can just think. I totally agree with that. So another question that comes up a lot is, how many pieces should I have in my final portfolio?
Well, as you know, the Creative Circus had you had to have a certain amount to graduate.
Yep.
But then after that, you could chuck the ones that don't work well. And
you learn as you interview.
Yes.
And people are very subjective.
What works and what doesn't work.
Someone's going to love it and someone's going to hate it.
Right. And so eventually you'll get a consensus, and then, unfortunately, you don't want to interview with those bad pieces in there, or the pieces that maybe you end up taking out initially. So I think you should be very careful. I think it's better to have less pieces that are great than, more work that's just...
So what's like a ballpark that's like a good number to, when you're finally filtering out, to really kind of go in with?
I mean, I think if you had, so someone that looks at your portfolio, which lives online, let's just say it's in, for simplicity's sake, and you've got it in cargo and it's box. I'm going to look, when it hits a recruiter's desk, and I'm going to speak specifically a little bit about in-house recruiters. It's all really, really fast. If they don't find something they like right away, they're probably not going to look further.
Okay.
But if they see something they like in the first one or two pieces, they'll look at the rest of the book. They're also going to check out
So start with your strong piece first.
Yeah, although I must
Don't
say,
tease
I always go to the middle piece first just to see,
Okay.
because I know everybody puts their strong piece like right up there first.
Okay.
But if you have any kind of blog, your social media is going to be checked out. Most people now have an About Me piece that should be, everything's got to be succinct, because understanding the process is important. And when you understand the process, then you're that much smarter, and I'm going to like you better if you don't waste my time with a story about how cute you were when you were a kid and you wore a ballet dress, and that was just
Right.
so funny. But you have to be respectful of the interviewers, the creative directors, everybody's time as well, and understand that that it does happen fast.
Sure. So you mentioned social media. I want to bring that up. What role and how big a role does that play in somebody getting a job? There was a 2014 poll on Career Builder that said 51% of job people looking for a job did not get one because their employers looked online and found something on social media that prevented them from getting a job. Now, again, I go out and I speak to these university students and remind them all these private chat rooms and private snaps and everything they think are private are not so private. So I have to remind them, don't get caught with a cocktail in their hand. And believe me, I went to the University of Florida, and I am so grateful that social media did not exist.
Right. No, that's extremely important, and you're going to have to clean all of that up. That's all there is to it. You can't.
I mean, do you go to social media when you're looking for,
I'll go to there, and anybody in a portfolio now will have all the little icons of all the different media, and you go and you check, especially if it's someone you're interested in, and you look at that, because it tells me about the person.
Right.
So
it gives
if there's
you the
a
whole
lot
story
of inappropriate things, it could lose a job for you easily.
Like give them examples, because I go out and speak, but what are some things that have really come up where you're like, oh, sister, what are you thinking?
Sometimes I'm trying to think of someone who lost their job. Typically people can lose a job after the interview, or they might something really lengthy, or they have a reaction that's inappropriate to a response that's inappropriate, but they're not going to get to that point until all their social media passes, you know.
Yep.
And occasionally I think people might miss that social media if they're not really thorough, like I have to be.
Because I mean, we're working in a fun industry, so
It's
but
fun
still, you
and
gotta
it's
keep it
liberal
clean
and it's
until
out there.
You got to
and,
get the job first.
You know, a lot of creatives have also, you know, I think they have bands. They play instruments. They're
Yeah.
musical, and I know some people that have not gotten jobs because somebody didn't like their band.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well,
you know, so
can't help the music there.
I'm trying to think specifically of someone who, you know, I wouldn't, you know, I've seen books where people have themselves nude and actually they got a really good job because it was tastefully done.
Okay, maybe they had a good body.
But I've seen, you know, pieces in people's books with razors and blood and
gosh.
you know, and that's
keep it clean. The answer
student
is keep
books.
it clean.
Yeah,
keep
so
it clean.
keep it, you know, I mean, like, would you be able to really do that in the real world? No. So why are you doing it in your student book or even in your social media? It's just,
keep it clean.
You know.
Okay, so moving on, as far as something like Showcase, now we see people come on and they're looking for jobs. We have now a jobs feature, and they can reach out to recruiters. Now, what are you looking for? Are you looking for their whole portfolio? Should they be having their resume? Like, when you look on their Showcase profile, what are you looking for?
Well, I think you definitely should have a link to your URL, a resume, and then a little bit about yourself that's very succinct.
Okay.
So I can see what your title is, what your what you've been doing, maybe specifically, and you know, I'm gonna look really quickly. So if you post something you know, that's very wordy, I'm probably not going to read it all.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to be clever with words, particularly if you're a writer, but if you're an art director or a designer as well.
Okay.
So.
And I always tell them, nice photo of your face. Like, we don't want to see you and 5 of your friends at the beach near a palm tree, because during an interview, they're not going to know which one was you.
Right.
You know, we want to identify you in your face.
Yeah. And
so that's very important.
You know, you said something earlier about being a visual thinker. Most people that are going to interview you, most people that you work for are also visual thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps associate you with the work, I think, if you can be really clean there in your image. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so as far as resumes, I also get questions about that too. What can they do to stand out when there's a whole pile of other people that are applying? I mean, they're like, should we do these super wacky, zany things? I would love to hear your thoughts, because I give them some advice, but what is your advice in that area? Because we hear about all sorts of crazy things that people have done to get jobs. So everyone thinks that they have to one-up somebody else.
I think there are very few stunts that you can get to get a job, really.
Right.
And you know, I like to see a resume that's just clean. Mm-hmm. You know, and the only thing I would say, like, if you freelance for the last 10 years, you don't have to list absolutely everything, because it can look like you've jumped around so much. So just put freelance this year to this year, and then list your freelance underneath it. Most agencies I work for want to see that resume. They want to see that background. I try and keep it on one page still.
One page.
But most websites will have the resume. You'll have a place for your resume. You'll have a place for, you know, a lot of people do about me. And then you can tell something personal about yourself that's hopefully, again, not too wacky, but that's relevant somehow, that says who you are, because people are hiring you. You know, they're going to look at your work first and make decisions based on that, but they're hiring you, the human being. So.
Now, you mentioned the word freelance. What's going on in that landscape right now? I know a lot of the buddies I went to school with, like, they're at a level right now, ECDs, and they've kind of even transferred over into that freelance world. Is that a trend going on now, or what's going on with freelance?
I mean, I think there's probably more freelance now than there has been. I think a lot of agencies and companies don't use a lot of freelancers because of the nature of the business. So that's always going to be, well, I can't say always, and with this business too much, but there are a lot of freelancers now. I think some people just like the freedom of freelancing as well, being able to, there's also a big insecurity in freelancing.
That's true.
So, and if you're an agency or a design firm or any other kind of business, it's usually a little bit more expensive for you to use a freelancer. So they're going to try and get you to come in full time, perhaps, depending on what their particular needs are.
So, Carol, you know everyone in this industry. You know creatives, you know creative recruiters, you know agencies. Is there any kind of secrets you want to reveal to us at the Showcase community?
I think just be smart, understand your process. Don't, there's some old school job seeking advice that will say flood everything with your your information, and in these fields, that's not right. Just know what you're doing. Know if your book is going to go over. Know if you're going to be right for the job. And if you're not going to be right for the job, don't send yourself in. Really read what the company is asking for and make it relevant to them, because otherwise you're wasting their time, you're wasting your time, and eventually, if you're someone like me that's the outside recruiter, and I've seen you twice for something I have, and you haven't been appropriate, I don't trust you on the third time. So, I want you to really be focused and kind of understand what you would be right for, not just throw it out and hope it sticks.
I really like that message. That's something that came up at the last conference I was at in DC, where there's students that they kind of needed to hear that message too. There were, some people from big cities, but a lot from small cities as well. And, there was one girl in particular, and she was asking me, is it okay if my dream isn't going to New York, to San Francisco, LA? And, absolutely. You have to kind of follow your own passion. And if it's a small town and you're going to be successful in a small town, that's okay. Mm-hmm. And, she was like, wow, no one's ever said it to me like that before. Like, that's okay that I don't want to go to New York. And, there's plenty of jobs that aren't in New York or LA or San Francisco or Chicago. And so I like what you said about you kind of have to follow your own goals. And
Right. Because there are, it can be a very big career, and it
a long one too.
It could be a very long career, and it's not one that's always, sometimes you'll have to adjust your salary. It's always about building a body of work that makes you successful and makes you relevant and makes you valuable to a company. So if you have gotten in a place that's becoming obsolete, because it happens a lot, then you're going to have to make a career adjustment. It's not like your dad's career. If you had a dad that had that kind of career that just went up, sometimes you have to go up. It's not so clearly defined. In creative, you have to manage yourself almost like you are a small business. You don't have someone that looks out for you and says, "Oh, you need to do this next." So you have to really be aware of what's happening culturally, because it's a bridge between art and commerce, and it's constantly changing. Technology has changed everything, and you can't get stuck in some winning formula you had 5 or even 6 months ago.
Oh gosh,
adjust,
changes, right?
So
you have to stay current.
Right, but I think there is a lot of money to be made, and if you do stay in a small town, you're just not going to make as much money as your friend that did New York, San Francisco, and any of the other, Los Angeles, the bigger markets, because it's just going to be different for you, and that's okay.
Yeah, your expectations have to be what they are, for sure. Okay, so any last words of wisdom, or?
Just be, targeted in your job search. Do your homework before you go in anywhere. Know everybody that you're going to talk to.
That's true.
Look at their profiles online. Look at their Shocase profiles, their LinkedIn profiles. Know what the company has done. Know what they're about. Know what they're doing currently. Just research, and you're going to do much better. And kind of know what you want, if you can. That's the hardest thing.
Yeah, that's very true. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so happy to see you, and thank you so much for coming by.